All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is 4 o'clock here in Los Angeles. Welcome to Data Sufficiency. Today's lesson is a good math lesson. Today's lesson is no new math, as far as you're concerned. Today's lesson is, exactly, it is one to celebrate. Today's lesson is just purely data sufficiency as a question type. There is nothing else at all here. The one thing that I want you to realize about data sufficiency here today is it is not a weird way to talk math. If that's what you think right now, you are effed. This is a game, folks. There is a game being played. The game ain't checkers either. The game is more like chess. Chess involves strategy. Checkers, not so much. If you do not approach every single data sufficiency question as if you are in a battle of, I don't know, wits of sorts with the test maker, you're going to lose, and you're going to lose in a bad way. Let's get that out the door right off the bat. What are we going to do here today? We'll start off with the fundamentals. The fundamentals are so basic as to be what I would call a waste of my time to teach it. But every single course proves me wrong. Every single course manages to flub the fundamentals in some really sad ways. My hope is this course will be the one to prove me right. The one to say, dude, that was a waste of our time. Why could we not focus on some more important stuff up in here? So my hope is if you crush the skill builder, we should be able to crush this first section, which is so basic, it's embarrassing again, but I know plenty of people are going to eat it early. But let me be clear on this. If you start to eat it early in this first hour, I strongly recommend you call it a day. Watch the video when it posts when you are mentally more equipped to tackle this lesson in a much more respectful manner. You're going to learn a lot. You're not going to learn a whole lot here today from us if you're approaching this lesson eating shit in this first hour routinely. I'm telling it to you now. You'll get to the end of these 3 hours, you'll be like, why does this guy think this is such good shit? This shit sucks. And it doesn't. You suck. And it's important that you understand that, because I don't want this to be a waste on you. If you're in the right mindset, this will be gold. I hope everybody is there. But if we're not there, again, we had a long day at work, got up at the crack of dawn, whatever your reason is, insert the blank, fill in the blank, that's cool. But do not neglect the content of this lesson. And by content, I really mean the strategy. It's a game-changing lesson, folks. By the end of today's lesson, my hope is DS becomes your new best friend. After the first part of the fundamentals, we'll get into the toolkit. The toolkit's not going to be much different than what we did last week. Very algebra dependent. So if you start to find that you're sucking it up here today, ask yourself, are you sucking it up on the DS tip, or are you sucking it up on the tools themselves or the fundamentals? And you got to be able to diagnose that correctly. The real good stuff, in my opinion, are these last couple sections, learning how to play the game, as well as starting to think about things in terms of constructs or models. That's where the real important stuff lies. But before we can get there, we got to get through some basics first. So let's start with the fundamentals. As a reminder, there are only 2 types of data sufficiency questions you will ever face. There's not 3, there's not 1, there are 2. The first is the yes-no question. Remember, a yes-no question is phrased in a way that elicits a yes or a no response. Therefore, what constitutes sufficiency here is a yes or a no response. Keyword being, I think, or. Yes or no? What constitutes insufficiency? The shrugging of the shoulders and maybe. Maybe it's yes, maybe it's no. That's not sufficient, obviously. Look at the bottom here. This is common traps. Please do not make these mistakes and feel good about yourself saying, oh, they're traps, they're common, it's okay, I'm allowed to make these types of moves. You are not. This is straight up common crap. These mistakes are completely inexcusable. I just want to be clear. When we get into the next question type, the value, there are some traps there that I can live with maybe. Here I cannot. Because there are people out there that right off the bat will see some multiple values in the mix and automatically go, oh, clearly not sufficient, multiple values. And at that point, I can't but wonder, do you know how to read? I asked, do you know how to read? Because it says right here, not sufficient if, the answer is maybe. It does not say not sufficient if the answer has multiple values. Very important we understand that right off the bat. Multiple values is not a problem, as long as they give you a yes or a no answer, but it's always got to be the same yes or no. That's not a trap, that is crap. The second type of mistake that someone makes is they get themselves an answer of no. They get a no and then they say not sufficient. And then I wonder, what the F is wrong with you? After all, clearly it says not sufficient if the answer is maybe. It does not say not sufficient if the answer is no. But even worse than that, it actually does say it is sufficient if the answer is no. So how one could make this kind of mistake is completely beyond me. That said, I never stop to ask if there are any questions. You're either with me or you're about to get run over by me. That's the way I roll through these classes. However, I want to stop and ask right now, because again, I don't want my blood pressure going up unnecessarily in this first hour. If you have any questions at all about a yes-no question, I want you to ask right now, because right now there's no such thing as a stupid question. But if you're not asking me any questions right now, what that tells me is, dude, I got this shit. Why are we moving at this remedial pace? Let's kick this up a notch and move forward. And I'm with you. Except I know about a quarter of us are going to start eating shit in the next 30 seconds, and I don't want to see that happen. So if I can avoid it, I want to do it right now. So any questions at all, ask now. Or forever hold your peace. All right. I like the confidence in the group here. Let's see what happens. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a few quick fire challenges of sorts. All I want you to do is tell me in the poll whether you think sufficient or not. So I want to take a look at this first question. As a reminder, this is the toughest math lesson to date. This first hour will send some of you into the fetal position, hopefully crying by the end of this first hour and logging off and saying, maybe the GMAT isn't for me. And maybe it's not. I don't know yet. Thus, every single question that I put up here is being asked for one reason, just to weed somebody out. If you are looking at each of these questions saying, no idiot's ever going to miss it, you're probably that idiot that misses these types of questions day in, day out. So it's now or never to start changing your approach, otherwise start to change your expectations. With that, let's put 20 seconds on the clock, let's bring some respect, let's get this started. All right. Question for you. What percentage of the class, this is like a random question now to make sure we're all alive here. What percentage of the class do you think got this question wrong? This is now an opinion. this is not a fact. What would you guys think on this? I'm just curious to know. We'll see who gets closest on this one. Jason, get out of here. So, the closest answer was, I believe, my good friend Felipe. Rayshawn, hey, I don't know if you should have that kind of trust, homie. That's like you trusting your boy LeBron's coming back. It's never going to happen at this point. Here's what I will say. It was 28.5%. So I said a quarter. Felipe came in at like 30%, so Felipe was the closest, I would argue. 25% was a good second runner-up. I said a quarter of you were going to eat it. Was I able to tell the future? Not even close. I just know how these types of classes operate. And it sucks because it's like, this is a stupid question, guys. Again, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything here. If I'm on the road to the 99, I'm looking at this question and me in particular saying, why are you wasting my time and insulting me with this nonsense? And it's like, oh, it's because a quarter of the class is about to miss it, or more than a quarter? Then I guess I should probably be learning something from it. So, forget sufficient or insufficient. I don't care about that. Question for you. What mistake is someone going to make when they approach this question? How do they screw it up? Let's kind of think about that for a second and get that out the door here. Because it's not a good start, guys. So, some of you are saying that they're assuming it could be positive, they forget the negatives. And that's not actually a real big problem, and I want to get to that in a split second. To Vivian's point, I think that's more accurate. Multiple values equals not sufficient, so exactly PU. And I would agree to Jonathan and Kelsey's point as well. It's like, no, I'm not that idiot. I do know how to read. We just went over this shit. Like, I get multiple values is not sufficient, man. I actually solved this. And then I figured out that it's 4 or negative 4. I knew 4 got me a no. Negative 4 got me a no. Clearly no means not sufficient. And it's like, what? No doesn't mean not sufficient either. Like, what the F are you talking about? This is bad. This is bad to start. I can't have 28.5% of you effing it up like this. 3 strikes, you're out. I'm putting people on full blast. Let me be clear once I start to see 3 strikers in the mix. So there's a decent number of you that rolled in with 1 strike right now. That's okay. I mean, it's still embarrassing in my opinion, but 1 strike I could live with. Step up and elevate your game, people. This is a very important lesson. Don't mail this shit in. Now, the reason I said that negative bit doesn't matter, although on other questions it is very important to keep that in mind, because let's just assume in this case I actually just thought it had to be positive, then I would get x equals 4, which would yield me a no, but no is good to go in my world, and thus it's still sufficient. And I would have got the question correct. I would have effed it up, but broken clock right twice a day, that's what I would have right here. So the assumption that it's positive is not fatal on this question at all. You shouldn't be doing it. Learn from it if you made that mistake, but you still would have gotten it right. So that's all I want to make sure you understand. But it is this low-level stuff that is a problem. Now, if you say to me, dude, you gave me 20 seconds to do this question. How the hell am I supposed to do this in 20 seconds? I would say to you, are you serious? Like, what are you trying to get on this test, a 400? Because if you're trying to get a 400, I could get why 20 seconds would not seem like enough time for you. But if you're in that, I felt like it was like 90-some% that wants a 7-something on this test, this cannot take 20 seconds. This is like a 5-second question. All right, with that out of the way, let's see if we can recover a little bit, folks. All I want to know is what you think on this guy. Sufficient or not in the polls. 20 seconds, bring more respect than you did on the first question, people. Now, much better showing on this question. Now, at the same time, I appreciate that some of you may be cursing me out at this point, telling me that I'm a deranged madman if I'm expecting you to do this kind of math in 20 seconds. And that's a fair assessment of sorts. Except this would not be a good exhibit to enter into evidence. So, question for you. Why, when I gave you 20 seconds, exactly, this would not be the good reason though. If I gave you 20 seconds on this question, which I did, why is that being overly generous of me? Why is it that you really need more like 2 seconds to do this question rather than the full 20 that I gave you here, folks? Exactly, Jason. Right on, Jonathan. Excellent, Vivian. Solid, Nick. I didn't expect you to solve. That's funny you say that, Nick, because I actually did expect some to try solving and die in the process, but I don't need you to do it. And you're absolutely right for seeing it. So solid, Raju, and great, David. Because, again, take a step back and start to recognize at the end of the day, I will have a number for X. It will either be greater than 5 or not. I will get a definitive yes or a no. What else is there? Super sufficient as a result. Now, question, just to make sure we're all on the same page here. If I were to change it slightly, and I were to just throw a minus 15x on the back end there, we all still agree that this would be sufficient, right? I just want to be sure before we move on. Again, I want to take baby steps here today. All right, good. So look, you always want to be able to say exactly one variable, of course I can solve. This isn't terribly tough at all. Now, question for you. Any brave souls out there that want to start to challenge this a little bit? Because you guys are all sheep heading for the slaughter right now. And it worries me that some of you are not being more critical. Be critical, folks. This is shit. Be careful, Ryan. No, because if x equals 5, you would still get a no answer. There we go, Molly. There we go, Molly. There we go with Molly. That's what I want us to start to see. Like, let's rewind back, guys. Here's, look, the first question we saw was a dog shit question, in my opinion. It was very easy. It's like a 200 level question. 90% of us got it right. If instead I had given you this question, I'd probably venture to guess 90% of you would have gotten it wrong. Think about that for a second. Why? What is it that you cling to? Oh, one variable, one equation, not quadratic. Generally good rules. But underlying that little clinging to that you're doing is this notion that you could actually solve for x. Exactly, Carl. Because if you notice here, in some sense, I got a 2x on the left. I got a 17 minus a 15 gives me a 2x on the right. I have the same x's on both sides. So whether it's a 5x, 5x, or in this case a 2x, 2x, those x's would cancel out. I have no effing clue what x would be in that case. So then it would be painfully, obviously not sufficient. So why am I pointing this out to you? Because I don't care about half of the questions we do in here. I'm worried always about them becoming more difficult, and how can I scale this up? Top of the pyramid stuff, what should I be on the lookout for? I'd be on the lookout just to make sure that I could actually solve for x. Not that I'm going to do it, just make sure it don't cancel out. Just take that extra 1 second and ensure you don't sloppily eat it on this one. Now check it. Some of you are 0 for 2 to start. These are not tough questions. Exactly, David, and that's why, you know, it's fair. 90% of you, like I said, every single person in here is like, oh yeah, that's good, that's good, that's good. And maybe it's because you trust me and you think I wouldn't lead you astray. And I won't lead you astray, but I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to try to get you to think critically in here. But here's what I want to get to real quickly. You just want to make sure that as we go through these questions, third strike, you're out. This is not a lesson where you could just flail all the way through. You're going to be wasting your time. You're not going to get shit out of this lesson. I just want to be clear on that. So 0 for 2, some of you are on my radar. And I already tried to ping some of you that had an ugly ass start to begin with. All right, so let's get done with this first section. So remember, yes, no questions, very straightforward. Always yes, always no, that's what's sufficient. What's not sufficient is a maybe. None of that, oh, multiple values crap, none of that definitive no crap. That is not a common trap, folk. This is just straight up common crap. I want to get to the second question type we will face. Only 2 question types. The value question. The value question is going to be sufficient if you get one value. What will constitute not sufficient? Multiple values. Like, to me, it doesn't matter if it's a yes, no question or a value question. I want one word coming out of your mouth. Imagine like a gun to your head, and the next thing that comes out of your mouth better be one word. If it's ever more than one word, you're about to get your brain's basically blown out. Like, that's all this is about. So if I'm in a yes, no question, they're like, is it yes or is it no? And you're like, maybe yes or no. Like, then you're done. It's just yes, no. Value, whatever the value is, you just give it to them. If you're like, well, it could be this value, it could be that, you're shot dead on sight. So note these traps now. These traps, I'm going to put them in quotes because they're not even good traps, but I can live with them. Sometimes you read too much into a question. You start assuming all sorts of things. Like some of you started seeing on the other one, maybe you assume things were positive. Again, it wasn't fatal to that question, but that assumption that things are positive or something as a whole number, like those tend to be definitely fatal with the value-based questions. Sometimes you fail to read enough into a question. Sometimes info is cleverly hidden in the question stem itself. Typically that something is an integer or something is positive. And thus if you miss that, then obviously you're going to say, oh, I don't got enough info. But you really did. You just kind of didn't see it. So these are traps. These are traps. These are, I'll say, forgivable. The first set of mistakes that people made, not forgivable at all. But again, we don't want to be making these types of moves. So, once more, let me stop right now. Let me ask. If any of you have any questions at all about the value-based question, ask now. Again, no such thing as a stupid question. Some of you on the 0 for 2 tip are about to strike out, and I would hate to see that happen. Ask now. At least show me you're frickin' trying before you start getting put on full blast here. Again, today is not a day that I want to dick around. Great question, Natalie. So that's, to that point there. You can never have contradictory statements. When you get into the you ought to know section, there's this section that they talk about contradictory statements basically, and the idea there is if you have 2 statements and they contradict, it either means the problem's effed up or you're effed up, and it's always you, not the problem. And that's because they have to be entirely consistent. After all, choice C means you combine them, but how can I combine things if they're contradictory? It doesn't work really. So I can have overlap. So maybe statement 1 says 2, maybe statement 2 says 2 or 5. That doesn't contradict, it overlaps. But if statement 1 says 2 and statement 2 says 5, you've messed up somewhere. So that's what I would say. So in theory, yes-ish is the correct answer to your question. All right, good stuff. Great question. Any other questions? Ask now or forever hold your peace, people. All right, we're about to start shaking the tree and knocking some fools out, which I'm good with. Let's keep this moving. So, next up, bring some respect. Again, I'm not wasting anybody's time in here. All I want to know is if you think something is sufficient or not in the polls. 20 seconds, let's do this. All right. So, question for you guys. What would you say right now? We're hovering in terms of, and now that you've seen some of the polls, what would you say is the dog shit factor on this first question here? Forget against sufficiency or not. What percentage of the class is getting this wrong? I'd be curious. I want to know if my boy Rayshawn is still coming in at that solid 0%, or has he lost faith in his classmates at this point? 15. 15. 15. You guys have a lot of faith here, man. 15's a lot of faith. I will say, Felipe is now going bigger. Felipe's lost faith. I will say, I think PU and Vivian are the winners on this one. The correct answer is 31%. 31%. 31%. How the hell is almost a third of the class eating it on this question, guys? This is ridiculously simple. So, question for you. What mistake is someone making on this first guy here? What is someone likely to do and eat shit on it? Again, it doesn't matter about sufficiency, insufficiency. I don't care about that. Yeah, be careful, Katrina, because it doesn't look like you got this question wrong, so I'm not sure what you're saying. But as we start to go, Tommy's 100% correct on this one. You know, I don't know if it's a forgetting to factor as much as it, or I forget how you phrased it because it's now already scrolled off my screen. But it's a damn laziness factor is what it is. If you remember from week 2, what did I say algebra was all about? Yeah, it's an inconvenient truth, so on and so forth. But bullshit, in my mind, is where the lazy and arrogant start to shine. But they don't really shine. It's more like a spotlight on you, and it makes you look really bad. If you're lazy and you're arrogant, what do you do on a question like this? You do this, and then you wait 18 seconds, because only 2 seconds burned off the clock, and you're like, I'm on the road to the 99, bitches. Like, why am I in this stupid class? Like, I don't need to be doing this class. Like, what the hell? I should take my test next week. Who wants to wait 6 weeks for this class to end? And I'd say to you, knock yourself out. Let's start figuring out when you're going to retake the class, probably your test. Because what you're doing here is not demonstrating any respect at all for the process. All you're doing is demonstrating hubris on a level that's unforgivable, in my opinion. Remember what we learned in week 2 algebra. If you have a square, it's called a quadratic in the mix. I am maybe I shouldn't be as confident as my boy Rayshawn. I am 99% confident if the question looked like this, I wouldn't have people making mistakes on this one. I really am. Because you would look at this, and I don't think any single idiot in here would say to me automatically, oh, X is 9. You would not do that. Why would you do that? Because that starts to demonstrate math I don't even understand. You would probably have the intuition that you got to combine like terms. And thus you factor out the X. And thus you realize, you know what, X could be a 0 or a 9. Clearly multiple values, clearly not sufficient. Like, my guess is that's what you would have likely done. Now, do I want you doing this? Hell no. Ugh. Hell no. I think this is pretty bad too. Like, this is a textbook way to do it, but you know in here the textbook way is a pejorative way to look at things. Like, to me, I am 100% okay with this little move of divide both sides by x and get to that. But big picture takeaway. Anytime I divide a variable out, I immediately have to bring it back as a potential zero value. That's it. End of story. All right. Let's take a look at this next question here. I see we have 1-3 striker in the mix, but Megan tells me that he's a guest here today, so I will not put him on full blast just yet. But 4 strikes, I'm putting him on full blast. At that point, I'm letting the bat hit you in the head on the way out. So, check it. We still have plenty of 2 strikers now, elevated. Let's clean this up, guys. Like, you should be looking at this right now and saying, this is a joke. And it is. How can a fucking third of us miss this? It is inexcusable. So let's do this right. Bring some respect. 20 seconds on the clock. What do you think in the poll, sufficient or not? All right, let's take a look at this question here. Better showing, but still not so good. Now, again, how far do I need to go on these questions? As they say, just far enough. The beauty of data sufficiency is I don't got to do all the math, folks. I just got to kind of fake my way there most of the time. So, question for you. Again, forget sufficiency or insufficiency. When I look at a question like this, how am I going to eat this early? How am I going to show the test maker I'm one arrogant SOB on this one? What is the mistake someone is likely to make here when they do something like this? Exactly, Jonathan. Solid, David. Right on, Nick. Great, Jason and Vivian. Exactly, Patrick. And yeah, I think that's fair, Pew. You know, you look at something like this and you're like, you got to do some factoring. And it's not even like you got to do a whole lot of factoring. I just want to be clear on that. Like, think about it again for a split second here. If I see a square here and I immediately want to say not sufficient, you realize what you're telling the test maker at that point? Again, go back to hour 1, day 1, the most important hour in this entire course, in my opinion. You've just told the test maker, hey man, I'm dumber than I really am. Like, I know right now that I'm not this dumb, but I've kind of just told you that I am. Because all I've done is disrespect you. I just spat in your face. I just spat in your face in a big way, and now it's in your eye, and you're trying to clean this loogie out, and it's like, sorry, give me my 760. Who's going to give you a 760 when you spit in his face? Like, I just don't get it. What have you demonstrated? That in 2 seconds you can identify that there's a square and that you know that that means multiple values? What the F? Like, this is where I need some of you guys to start talking to me. Like Francis, Gurpreet, Natalie, Min Young, Kelsey, Elizabeth, talk to me. I don't like the silence here today. This is shit to start. Like, how the hell are we starting to make these types of moves as we go through these types of questions? We're not demonstrating respect. All I need you to do, again, it comes back to something very simple. If this had been on the other side, I'm led to believe some of you would have had light bulb type moments where you would have said, hey, this is a square, this is a square, hey man, is it possible that looks like something that's double in between? Because if so, shit, I know from week 2 algebra that there are the perfect squares, it's the same value 2 times. I ain't gonna fall for that. And I think that's important to realize. Hey, that's fair, Natalie. You know, you're not in the elite 3 strike club. I feel like my girl Kelsey's already swinging 2 times on this one. Not pretty. Like, today is not the day that I want to just be passive on this shit, folks. This is a very important lesson. Very, very important. And if I'm not able to get everything I need out of it, I should not be here. All right, let's move the page on this one. Common traps. This wasn't in play on the last one. But you will see these on questions moving forward. Don't assume, don't fail to read enough. All right, let's take a look at this question here. It says, is the triangle equilateral? This is a geometry question, obviously. We did a little geometry yesterday in sentence correction, I would argue. Geometry as a programming note comes next week. Hopefully you guys spend some time doing this damn skill builder. And by doing, I mean crushing. It will be a rough lesson, but I'll save those comments for the end of the lesson. But I will talk about enough geometry here for us to get through this question. It says, is the triangle equilateral? Equa means same, lateral means side. They want to know, does this triangle have all 3 same sides? If a triangle has similar sides, by definition, it's got to have similar angles. All the angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So really the question is each angle 60 degrees? That's it. Now remember, we were talking yesterday, hey, what door are we going through in sentence correction? I've always talked about in data sufficiency what door we're going through. The idea is always start with the easiest one first. What is that, 1 or 2? This is not an opinion, this is a fact. Where would you begin this journey? Okay, good. All right, let's recover, man. We are off to such a shitty start, but absolutely, this is all about statement number 2. It's not even close. But let me ask you this. If I were to start on statement number 2, and I'm one of these knuckleheads that's been eating it early because I'm not respecting the process, how would I screw up statement number 2's analysis? Again, forget sufficient, insufficient, I don't care about that. But what type of conceptual mistakes would I make on statement number 2 that would bury me alive? Hey, that's a good comment, Felipe. Here's what I would say. You can always assume something is drawn to scale unless they say otherwise. And I think that's okay. And to Molly's point, you know what? By putting those letters in those angles, I think that's important. Like, you can, that's all right to see it that way. I think Natalie is kind of on the correct side, and I think someone else mentioned some comment on the XY tip and assuming X is Y. You are 100% correct. That is a very low-level mistake to make. People do it all the time, though, and you guys are absolutely right there. And yeah, exactly, Katrina. So let's rewind back on this one. If you know Z is 50, the lowest level mistake someone could make is, that's all right, but I don't know anything about X and Y yet, so I can't answer this question. I want to know if X, Y, and Z are all the same. You're only telling me what Z is, but I don't know about X and Y. Not sufficient. If that's your move, you suck at geometry. And then you figure that geometry weakness out. That's not a DS fail, that's a geo fail. Like, dude, if you got one angle that's 50 degrees, you don't need a rocket science degree to tell you that ain't equilateral. Get back into the skill builder. But obviously we haven't done it, so that's okay a little bit here. I think the next level of mistake, which is not a geometry mistake, but then becomes a data sufficiency mistake, again, it's important to diagnose your errors correctly so you can treat them, is you say, well, no, you idiot, I know it's not an equilateral, but hey, no means not sufficient, right? That's what it said on the slide. It's like, no, go back and get your damn eyes checked. It said no is sufficient. So this question boils down to immediately B or D here. And so just make sure you realize that. Now if I look at statement number 1, you're telling me two angles are the same. Knowing two angles are the same is not enough to tell me that it's equilateral. Clearly choice B becomes the final answer. But question for you, thinking like the test maker a second here. If I want this to be sufficient and I want choice A to be the correct answer to this question, what would I change this one word to in order for this to work? You know, Jacob, good question, and isosceles is correct, by the way. Excellent, folks. Jacob, I don't think that is correct, meaning I think whatever diagram you've got with the data sufficiency question is A-okay. If it's not drawn to scale, they're supposed to say not drawn to scale, but the only danger that I would strongly suggest you steer clear of is marking up your diagram until you're ready to combine statements. Because a lot of times what people will do is they will mark up, say, statement number 1 and leave that diagram marked up, and then when they examine statement number 2, they start to see that, hey, wait a minute, I have all this information there, but it's like, no, you don't have all that information there. You just freaking assumed it was there because it was in your diagram. So I think that's something that I would think about, but you know, I'll be honest, my lawyerly paranoia, I don't rely on shit with the diagrams other than them telling me generally where things are. But I ain't sizing this up because to me, that could be 59 degrees. Hell, that could be 62 degrees. My eyes can't tell that. So just be careful. Always be careful is, I suppose, my takeaway there. All right, let's take a look at this next question here. It says, what is the value of x? Okay, yeah, most welcome. Good question. So notice here, it says, what's the value of x? How is someone going to eat it on statement number 1 here? Well, yeah, whoever's asking that question to Megan, you got to check your geo knowledge. Exactly, Ryan and Molly and Steven. You see something like this and you're immediately like, all right, boom. And it's like, wait a minute. You know, Jason earlier submitted what x could be, although ahead of time, I suppose. Why can't it be 3.14? It could be fucking anything, really. So awesome, absolutely right, Kelsey and Angelique and Anta. Do not make that assumption. Clearly, statement 1 is not sufficient. Statement number 2, obviously someone's going to assume things are positive. We saw this earlier, but you know it's not necessarily. This comes down to 50-50, C or E. If I know that x is between 3 and 5, I know it's either 4 or -4. Clearly 4 is the final answer. But remember, we can change this so quickly. How? By, I don't know, changing the question. So if I say, what is the value of x, where x represents the number of teeth that perhaps my younger daughter now has in her mouth, what can you tell me about that number x when I say it that way? Because I'm giving you, all the math is still the same, but I'm giving you some more information there. Has to be an integer, absolutely, but be careful here. A lot of you are still missing this. Something about our dentist was there, I missed it already. Remember, I have blind man font, even if I wear my damn glasses. Trick question. Why you gotta hate on my daughter's grill, Jonathan? Here's what I'm gonna say. I don't think I saw anybody say this though. Exactly, Vivian. Solid, James. Be critical, folks. At this point, it's non-negative. That's all. Like on this question, it's not going to change the answer. But I want you to start to see that non-negative is not the same as positive. Because yeah, dude, maybe my little girl doesn't have any teeth yet. So here, if you said positive, you would still pick choice D. If you said non-negative, you would still pick choice D. Because it has to be 4, it has to be 4. Like, that's it. So you'd still end up in the same place, but this is wrong. I need you guys to see this. And again, on this question, it's not effing tough, but I don't care about a good number of these questions, as you are well aware. I want us to be ready for stuff that gets tough. It's 99 or bust up in here. All right, with that, I want to finish this first portion of this lesson. Again, it's a complete colossal waste of time. However, so many of you have gotten so many of these questions wrong, not once, not twice, well, I guess really close to twice, only 1 3-striker in the mix. I need us to do better. So, we're about to take our first break here shortly. But before we do, we still have a little bit more fun stuff to go through. Let's kick this up a notch, though. All it requires is respect. You can't look at anything we did in this first hour thus far and go, shit, that was tough math. There was nothing that we did that was even remotely difficult. Every single thing we did, though, had a little twist. You know why it has a twist? Because the GMAT test maker hates you. The GMAT test maker is my friend, he's Megan's friend, but he hates you. He's looking to shiv you every single chance he gets. Like, that's the level of awareness we need to have. Once we have that, then shit, all this stuff becomes easy street. Just remember that. So, remember, we have several tools available. I'm right back at them. Exactly, dude. That's all you got to do. Like, once you see them, it's very easy. Then it becomes, you know, I don't know, well, never mind. I was going to go into this rant about Kobe and the Kobe stopper and how there's like this new level of respect that's been talked about here. Now it's like you hate each other, and then before you know it, you have respect just for the game that they have. That's all this is about. So, getting into the tools. What are our tools? Number 1 is algebra. Always algebra. Like, not always, but kind of always. Step 2, conceptual understanding. Conceptual is good. Because in data sufficiency, you fake it until you make it. You don't got to do the math. That's the beauty on a lot of the questions. Some of them questions you got to do the math and effing do it. But if not, fake it. Third is picking numbers. Notice there's no back solving here. You can't back solve. You don't got no numbers to back solve with. But number picking, yeah, obviously very important. Does just do it better? I don't really know. We'll get to that in a second. So I want to take a look at this first question here. Now, what should remember, it's all about takeaways. Remember I said in my email last week, hey, look for those triggers that tell you how to respond. Like, that's the only way you get better at this. If every single time you look at a GMAT question, you're like, oh, this is a nice new question. No, you're on crack. It's all the same shit. So when you look at a question, at least in my eyes, that has minimal wording, decent chance it's just a straight up algebra question that's in play. Again, I said to you, week 2 algebra, easily the second most important lesson, if not tied with week 1 arithmetic in terms of importance of the entire course curriculum. So here it says for integers a, b, and c, that's all bullshit. There's nothing of value there. What is the value of? Like, I could cross all that out. So really what this, and shit, I don't even need a what is, really. I could have, hey, a over b minus c equals 1, b minus c over b, question mark. Like, that screams out, hey, don't sit here and try to think conceptually. Don't sit here and try to pick numbers. Like, this screams out algebra because it doesn't have a lot of words in the mix. That's the way I tend to respond. Now, this question is a little bit more challenging. A lot more challenging? No, just a little bit more challenging. So all I want to do, again, quick fire challenge, sufficient or not in the polls. But for this one, I'll give you 30 seconds to pop this wide open. F it, I'll be generous. Let's just, 40, what the hell. 40 seconds, even 40 is a lifetime on this. But know what the sucker move is going to be. Again, if you can't spot it, you win it. Respect it. Not everyone's getting this question right, folks. I should be able to see how they're going to screw it up, so I ain't the guy who's doing it. 40 seconds on, let's do this right. right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. I gave you quite a bit of time on this one because I even decided, well, secretly I got a bunch of private chats that I gotta still hammer out, so rest assured I'm getting to each one in turn. Obviously I haven't been on my desk all damn day to start. What one observation did the lazy and arrogant here fail to make on this question? Because I know how to respond on this. It's very easy, knee-jerk response. But you're effing it up in a big way because you're just so lazy and so arrogant. How is someone going to screw this up, folks? Whoa, dude, you're talking high-level math on me, Ryan. There we go, Jonathan. Because Carl, dude, you might be above my head too. You and Ryan are talking like freaking like existential math or something. Remember, I suck at math up in here. Solid, Raju. Jacob, exactly. Not copying off of Jonathan. That's the mistake they made. Excellent, PU. Like, as we go through these questions here, the one thing that I would say to you is what I've said to you before. When you get to the question mark at the end of a data sufficiency question, if you decide to run right into statement 1 and statement 2, you're an idiot. Again, I cannot sugarcoat that. That is the way amateur hour works. 99ers, we know that, and thus we do not do that. We say, hey man, there's probably some juice in that damn question I should be trying to squeeze out more of before I start going to town on the next set of oranges. Because I'm not a guy who kind of wastes things. It's about resource management. That is what data sufficiency is about. Again, if you're working for a company trying to get a job done and you want to buy a hell of a lot of material to do it, you're going to get fired. You're wasting the company's dime. And so when you look at a question like this and you say, hey, that's about B and C and this shit's about A and B, this is a joke of a question. Why is this idiot giving us 40 seconds to do this? You're right, I should have given you 10 minutes and you still would have gotten it wrong. Because you're not bringing one thing, which is respect here. And to me, that's a problem. If that's the level of analysis that you're willing to make on a question like this, why are you here? This right here is not an accident. This right here is just an inconvenient truth. Remember week 2 algebra, Al Gore. That's just a really awfully inconvenient way of just saying that. Because again, my hope is the lazy and arrogant among you, which include now, I'm going to say my boy Felipe times 2, Ryan, Angelique, Carl, Elizabeth, Patrick, Anta, Stephen. If you had seen this on the actual question, my hope is you would not have said anything other than, what the F? Isn't this just a real fancy way of asking me what A over B is? Because think about that for a second. If they had asked you what is A over B, you think you would have dicked around on this question with anything other than with a boom, automatic money in the bank sufficiency? That's all this test is about. It's a respect test. Do you have enough respect on any of these questions to show the test maker that you belong in the elite club that he's trying to keep you out of? That's all. This is not a tough question. Certainly not worthy of 40 seconds of your time. The silence is deafening in here, guys. I've already gotten a couple of you saying, dude, I should peace out. Smart move. Again, this is not a lesson to just mail in. This is a very important lesson. Like, I don't give two shits about week 5 and week 6. Week 5 and week 6, they're bonus weeks for me, as far as I'm concerned. Weeks 1 through 4, the most important weeks in here, guys. Very important, I see that. All right, let's take a look at this second question here. It's under the section to use conceptual understanding. What does conceptual understanding tell you? It means, you don't got to do the math if you don't want to do the math. And I think if you have a good understanding of the concepts here, you should identify the one word that's going to make or break sufficiency on this question. If you cannot identify the one word, that means you don't know the concept. And remember, you have to know the concept well enough that if my instructor over at office hours can't show up today, you'd have no problem just stepping in for them and then just fielding questions for 2 hours straight on this material. If you don't have that level of understanding, hey, guess what? You're better off doing the algebra. If you say to me, well, what if I suck at the algebra? I'd be like, dude, it's week 4. How are you still sucking at algebra in week 4? Like, what the F do you do with your free time? It better be algebra. So with that, let's put 40 seconds on the clock. Bring some respect. Let's knock this out. All right, guys, let's go ahead and look at this question here. What is the one word that defines sufficiency or not sufficient on this one? What should I have seen coming a mile away and said, oh, boom, I don't got to do jack on this question? Why do I get the sense that a decent number of us need to go back to week effing 1 arithmetic, guys? Natalie, Kelsey, Minyoung, Stephanie, David, Katrina, 100% correct. And so to Jason's point, you are correct. The key word that tells you whether this whole thing is sufficient or not is right there, guys. That doesn't mean that all of you are getting it wrong if you're not telling me the right word. I see a decent number of you still got the question right. But we're not pinpointing the exact reason. And that is it. Like, if this had said 5 times as many, it's a great, sufficient answer. But because it doesn't, it's not. Hey, Natalie, that's great, man, or woman. In this particular case, anytime the skill builder flashes in your head, that's a good sign. There's too many of you that are like, nah, that shit's optional, right? Okay. Now check it. Remember, and I think Jason made the comment, like, you can't be subtracting in a ratio without knowing the original parts. You should realize that. But dude, just do this algebraically. You know what I've said in here before, and I'll say it again. Write what you read as you read. Nobody's got time to reread up in here. And thus, if I translate this as this go, what is this? The ratio of cats to dogs, C to D, use variables that mean something. Statement number 1, if there are twice as many cats, 2C, 5 fewer dogs, that's a D minus a 5. The ratio of what? Cats to dogs, so cats to dogs would be verb 5 to 2. Okay. Now, can I sit here and manipulate this so I get C over D? Hell no. Why? Because of this nasty minus 5 staring at me. I'm not going to do a lick more of algebra. All I need to do is understand from a big picture perspective what I got. And that's it, guys. So, would I have done this conceptually? Hell no, to be honest with you. Why would I? I write what I read as I read. There's zero chance I would have got to the end of this question as well as this statement and then said, oh, what should I do, algebra or conceptual? By the time I'm done reading it, I've already got all this on my page. And if that ain't you, you ain't doing it the right way. Again, my opinion. Nobody's got time to reread, not on simple stuff like this. Again, I'm not saying to you can't reread on this test, but save that rereading for questions that are difficult, not stuff like this that are just gimmes on a frickin' silver platter. If you got this question wrong, it does not mean you suck at data subdivision. It means you suck at arithmetic ratios. Work on that. All right, with that, I want to get into this last type of skill, which is number picking. I think a lot of people do number picking, and it's a very low-level strategy in my opinion, but there's a time and place for it, and I think this is a great example of a time and a place for it. But when people do number picking, they do it in a shitty way. They don't do it the right way. They do it very haphazardly, and thus leading to more pain and suffering. So let's figure out how to do this correctly. How to do it correctly? They say, play devil's advocate. I say, pick with purpose. We both say it gets you to the same damn place. And that is to say, if you're going to pick numbers, have a purpose behind the numbers that you're picking. Try to accomplish something. What is it you're trying to accomplish? Just trying to argue the other side is the way they see it. So how do we put that into practice? Well, let's take a look at this question here. Notice what you've got in front of you, some absolute values. If it were just one absolute value, I'd tackle it algebraically all day long. Even if it were two absolute values, I'd secretly probably do it algebraically because I'm not as bad at algebra as I claim that I am. However, three absolute values, zero chance of doing it algebraically because I ain't that good. I do suck at math. It would take me a hell of a lot of time to do it that way, considering all the positive negatives, and why would I? It doesn't make sense. It's all about beating the timer to beat the test, and I know efficiency is key, and in order for me to do that, I gotta be flexible in my approaches. And number picking, you better believe, is one of those tools I got in my back pocket. I don't use it a hell of a lot, but when the timing is right, I bust it out left, right, and center, and this is an example where I should. Now, you know I don't like to trip over my own feet, so how would I go about setting this up? Probably by a little chart of sorts where I can start to pick some numbers out of the sky and keep it organized. Now, in terms of values for x and y, what should I be picking? Stuff that's easy to work with. I'm not going to be all like x is radical 317. I'm not going to be like y is negative 113 over 219. Like, how's that going to help me? It's going to trip me up. So instead, I pick numbers that are simple, small, maybe a 2 and a 1, and then I start to plug things in. So if I say, hey, 2 minus 1 is 1, 1 is greater than 2 minus 1 is 1, I get 1 over there, I get 1 is greater than 1, and at that point I realize something is wrong, because 1 is not greater than 1. So again, what does that mean? That means either the problem is messed up or I'm messed up. And I can always assure you, it's not the problem, it's me. And so what I've done is I've picked values that don't even comply with the constraint they've given me. And that's a problem. And I need to go back to the drawing board on this one. And so if I do, I'd say, okay, well, how about I realize that I should have probably just switched them. And if I do a 1 and say a 2, I get a 1 minus 2 is a negative 1. Absolutely, that's a positive 1. Here, a 1 minus 2 is a negative 1. I get 1 is greater than negative 1, which is true. It's a fact. And remember, statements are always facts. That means these numbers are now valid numbers for me to work with. We've already learned anytime we have an inequality with a 0, they're just testing me on signs. Is this negative? No, it's positive. I got me a big fat no answer. Now I have to pick with purpose. It doesn't matter what numbers I pick to start. I could have done anything I wanted to. But now that I've gone this far, I need to be intelligent about how I proceed next. So, question for you. If I want to waste my time, hypothetically, what types of numbers should I pick next? Again, I'm just trying to waste my time. I'm trying to dilly-dally on this test because I don't believe in beating the timer to beat the test. What would I pick next to kind of screw this up? So yeah, more positives. Definitely that would be a colossal waste of my time. What else would be a waste of my time here? I think that's right, Umar. More, to that point, even more negatives, because if they're the same signs, that's a waste. I think great, Min Young. I think in this case, having solid, James, I think even bigger numbers, that's fine. I could try fractions. You guys are also missing something in a big way. Be critical. Remember what I said about non-negative. Think about that exactly, Natalie. Solid. Like I could do a positive, I could do a 0. Some of you would be like, oh, I want a 0 and a negative fraction. Like I got to be thinking about all these different things. Great, Raju and Angela. Like these were all great things to think about. But take a step back. Notice what it will yield you. Is this going to be negative? No. 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 And thus you might say on your end, hey, I'm not that idiot that goes, oh, clearly multiple values, that's a problem. I know as long as I get an always yes or always no, I'm good to go. I remember at least that much when that guy was talking about at the beginning of the lesson. So I got me a no, 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 I got me a no. Clearly always no is good to go. So super sufficient is my final answer. And I'd be like, hey, dude, that's pretty good, but still shitty. Because you did not stop to think even for 1 second, am I setting myself up for even a yes answer? Like, you have to stop and you have to try to think, how can I get to where I want to be? And all you got to do is look over here. Because if I look over here, it's like, well, what's going to get me to a yes answer is something with differing signs. That is it. And so had I started with differing signs, then I would just do the opposite. I would try one of these next. So it doesn't matter where you start, it matters where you end. And it comes with learning how to pick with purpose or playing the devil's advocate. So if right now I realize like, hey, I'm not going to do a self-fulfilling prophecy where I can guarantee the outcome before I even test it because I'm already picking numbers that are going to guarantee me a no, I'll stop, slow down to speed up, and think about what it is I want to see. And yeah, I need differing signs. So how about I bust out a 1 and a -2? And if I do that, what do I end up getting? I got 1 minus -2 is a positive 3. Absolute, that's a 3. 1 minus -2 is a positive 2. That's a negative 1. I get 3 is greater than -1, which is a factually true statement. This, of course, then is a valid set of values I could play with. This would yield me a yes answer. And notice no is not the same as yes. So as a result, this statement, not sufficient. That's it. Notice the arguable efficiency with which I proceeded on this question. I tested 3 sets of numbers. The first set of numbers, I'm not paying attention, I'm just pulling random ass numbers out of the sky. But then I realized, hey, I got these constraints, I got to pay attention, get back on my game. Then I pick some other random number, I pick positives because positive are easy. Doesn't matter if I pick negatives, positives, what doesn't matter, whatever speaks to you, and I got the job done. I got me a big fat no. And then I stopped a second. I thought to myself, how could I waste my time? Stayed the F away from that, and then got to where I needed to be. So with 3 sets of numbers, I basically got where I had to. And arguably, once we start doing this in a better way moving forward, we're just really dicking around with 2 sets of numbers and that's it. We're not effing this kind of stuff up. But if we do, it's understandable. But get back on the horse correctly. Do not go down this rabbit hole, though. So when should you pick numbers? It's kind of like what we talked about last week, when the math starts to get really ugly potentially. This would be an example of some ugly ass math. Now, what kind of numbers should you be picking? I think positive negatives are good. Non-integers slash integers, I would say, are important, right? You can go fractional, you can go whole. I think that's important. 0 and 1, I think that's important. There's odd, even, prime factors. If you have not busted the question wide open by then, you're screwed. Now, to that point, let's go back here for a split second. Remember, I got me a no value here. All I was in the quest for was a yes answer, which means differing signs. Let's say I tried and I tried and I tried and I could not find it. Guess what? I guess it's sufficient. I don't even need another no. I got me one no. So clearly no is fine. I just can't get a yes, which means I'm no longer getting a maybe. Sufficient, I'm done. Very important to realize that. Okay. with that, then this last bit, just do it. I'll be honest, I don't really understand it. I think it just basically says, hey, look, don't fight the feeling. When you see a question like this, it just screams out algebra, get it done. It's not complicated. All right, with that then, I want to get to full-length problems next, but this is a very good time to not only take our first break, but have a conversation with ourselves in the mirror or me via private chat. I don't care about whether we've got enough in us to continue on today, because things are about to start to get real. As far as I'm concerned, the very next question we're about to do, a full-length question, we'll have a drop the course answer. We're in week 4. I don't care. It may be a good time to drop the course. And it ain't even going to be me telling you that anymore, because I'm going to teach you the single most important thing in the entire data sufficiency lesson next. But in order to do that, in order to hear it and receive it loud and clear, we need to be thinking and respecting. Let's spend the next 5 minutes figuring out if we're in it to win it. No shame to saying we're not coming back next week. Remember, Monday's lessons advanced verbal, Wednesday's lessons geometry. But if so, let's take some time. Let's do this right. We'll get back to work after the break. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into this next section here. Love the comment that came my way from someone who's obviously hungry. This is not a journey that one should give up on. Any idiot can beat this test. You freaking see emails from me every single week with evidence of just that. But you need to have the right approach. And so if we can't get the right approach, it's okay to weed those people out. And that's something that's, again, very important part of this journey. Figure that out early. Change my approach or change my expectations. With that, then, I do want to get to what I think is the most important part of this entire lesson. It comes at the very end of this lesson. It is buried in the book. You won't even recognize its significance if you just read the book. And thus, you'd be doing yourself a disservice, or maybe the authors are doing you a disservice by not putting it on full blast for you. So let me put it on full blast for you right here, right now. I do think it is the single most important thing you could take away from this entire lesson. And what it is this. That's a little chart. It's called the DS reward system. And in my opinion, it's a game changer. If you're going to write answer choices on your damn paper, which I don't think you should, none of this 1 to 10 crap, definitely none of this AD, BCE, BD, ACE junk either. If you're going to write one thing on your paper, I'm okay if it's this. Because what this DS reward system does for you is, first of all, it gives you all the answer choices in front of you. Not that you need it, you should have it already flowing through you. But more important, all right. That's exactly right. This is how we want to see if you're fucking paying attention right now. Half the people are still like sleeping, and as a result, it's like, you don't even know what you missed. But in this particular case, we got it. It's that Hollywood magic here. All right, so we are back. My apologies here. So as I was saying to you, in my opinion, this is super important because it shows you what type of mistake you're likely to make on this. Likely being the operative word. Likely means like 90% of you, if you make a mistake, are going to do it in the ways that I'm about to identify. You don't need to trust me on that number. You can just pay attention to the polls as they get broadcast here today. And I would strongly recommend you go through every missed data sufficiency question to date with this now as a backdrop and go back and analyze your moves. See how you flubbed it. 90% of the time it will be just the way I'm about to describe it. So what do they have here? They have these answer choices that are organized from the most powerful of source to the least powerful. The answer that can do everything to the answer that can't do anything. And to kind of, again, put this into a workplace setting, because this is, I think, very fitting. Imagine being tasked with an assignment. The worst outcome you could possibly have for you and your career is you walk into your boss's office and say, yo, I can't do the job. It's not a good look. A better outcome for you is you walk into your boss's office and say, yo, I can get the job done, but it's going to cost us quite a bit. Because I got to go buy materials from this company, then I got to go buy materials from that company, so get out the checkbook. But at least I'm getting it done. A better outcome is you walk into your boss's office and you're like, man, I could get the job done. Plus, I ain't even going to cost just a lot of money to do it. All I got to do is go to that company and pick up the material, or I got to go to that company and pick up the material. I got to go to one of them. I am captive to their pricing, but at least I ain't buying material from two companies. Give me that raise. The guy who's going to get the promotion is the guy who walks into the boss's office and says, man, not only can I get the job done, not only am I not going to cost the company a fortune, but I actually don't even give two shits about where I get my material from because I'm really that good at what I do. Give me material from company one, give me material from company two, I'll still get it done. So now, get the cheapest guy in the door, put it out to bid, and I look like the hero that saved the company. That's the guy at the top. Now, is it often that you're going to flub this by more than one kind of level? No, not at all. 90% of the time, if you make a mistake, it's going to be because you're here and you should have been there, or if you're here, you should have been here. Like, it's not like you're going to say, oh, of course I could get the job done any which way at all, but then the right answer ends up being, dude, there's zero chance you can get it done. Like, you look like the first idiot that gets fired on site. So if you screw this up, you screw it up by just one level. And that's very important to understand. Because what this DS reward system says is, look, man, if you do a question in that disrespectful way that some of you are prone to doing questions, that's actually okay, because here's a safety net for you, as long as you use it as such. So since you only spent 30 seconds on the question, what do you do with the rest of the time? Make sure you didn't F it up. And how do I make sure I didn't F it up? All I do is look up one level and look down one level. And that is it. 90% of you will be within one level of the right answer. Now, what about those of you that look up one level and still don't get to the right answer? Do you have any right to say this is a junky system and it don't work? Hell no, you're junk. Why? Because this system isn't even meant for you. Like, if you have such fundamental deficiencies in your quant game where you can't even be within one level of the quant question's right answer in this DS context, that's on you and you need to start to own it. Like, this presumes some bare bones minimal skill set. And if you can demonstrate that, this will save your hide. If you can't, then you obviously got other things you need to be working on. Don't worry about DS, man. Go work on the fundamentals first. And some of you have come to that realization, and that's okay. Better now than on test day in 2 weeks from now. For the rest of this lesson, I want us to be thinking about this, because this too will help us start to identify sucker answers, because now we're going to start doing full-length questions. If you don't know what the sucker answer is in data sufficiency, you're picking it. It's not like quant. Word problems, plenty of sucker answers. We saw that last week. Obviously, even starting to learn how to think like the Vegas test taker, my roguish strategy helped to start to see that. But in DS, dude, every single question has a great sucker answer waiting for you to pick it. If you do not see it, you're in it. And that's where we want to start to kind of cut some of that fluff out. So with that, then, I want to take a look at this question here. Is this a tough question? Of course not. However, there will be a decent number of people eating it. And it comes back to not math being challenging. The math has not been challenging thus far. It's just a respect issue. So what's on tap here? There is obviously a right answer. I want the right answer in the poll. There is what I will call a high-level trap answer. High level. You're close, but you don't stick the landing. You got a little bit too cocky. You didn't want to run through the tape. You wanted to start celebrating before you got there. Well, you deserve it at that point. Worse than that, though, there is a low-level trap answer. And I'll actually put this in quotes, because it's really not that low a level trap answer. It's really more like a straight-up crap answer, guys. I get it, but it is so disrespectful that really that's what you want to pick? There is what I will call a crap answer, But I really think that's kind of generous. I think it's more just drop the course now. You have nothing to gain for the next 2 weeks. Save yourself $250. Don't even take the GMAT maybe. Things to think about. Now, there is also what I will call a WTF answer. Because I don't really understand this answer. There is a drop the course answer. This is kind of it, David. And I'm going to say the what the F answer either sneaks in right below the right answer, like really you can see that, or it kind of fits in right here, somewhere in between crap and drop. So I'm not really sure what your mind is seeing on this. But either way, it's not really a good move. Here's my only ask. Whatever you do, just look up and look down a level and make sure you're in the right place. Now, please make sure you understood the words that came out of my mouth there. I did not say, look up and look down and just change your answer. Only an idiot would do that. If you ever change an answer in here, it's because you have a reason for doing so. We've seen it before, but I just want to reiterate that again, because I'm talking about this system that I think is a game-changing system, but some of you aren't really listening. Some of you are like, oh yeah, so great. So if it looks like C, then I should just pick E? What the F are you talking about? So all I'm asking is, wherever you end up, just make sure you're in the right place. Just look left, look right, and be like, oh yeah, no, you're talking to me. All right, sweet. You know, it's like, well, never mind. I was going to start talking bar dating style, but at this point, there's no point. So let's bring some respect on this. 2 minutes on the clock. Let's get this done. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. Now, here's the good news on this question. We are barely at 90% right now. We're not even at 90. That's if we round up, we are. No, 100% correct. My ass, dude. Did Rayshawn hack your account at this point? Not only worse than that, there is a drop the course answer here right now. Like, there are people that are looking, not even just one. There look like there are multiple people that want to drop the course today, which is cool. I'm gonna miss you, maybe. But let's get there slowly. Because I'm going to tell you that the polls aren't going to lie. 90% of you are going to be within one answer every single time. But right now, the polls are kind of making me look like a liar. They're like at 89.6%. Now, that's making me look bad, and I'm not happy to see that. So first things first, let me ask you this question here. What is the one answer choice that you would say, if you pick it, you should just drop the course now? Again, just where would you send somebody that you're like, you're so beyond hope, there is nothing I can do to help you? Fortunately, you're not in that world, Anta, so you don't need to worry. But yes, very, very nice. So notice here, to Anta's comment, Anta sees that it's E, which means then she ain't dropping the course. Because she could see it, and she's like, I ain't touching with you with a 10-foot pole. There's nothing of value there for me. Now, there are people right now that are laughing at people in choice E, because choice E is very real, folks. It's in the poll. There are people that are saying, you fool, don't you understand? If you got two equations and two variables, of course you could get it done. You really should consider dropping the course. In fact, one of you who's in choice C is telling me right now in the main chat that E is the drop the course answer, and I get that. But remember what I've tried to teach you for the last 4 weeks in here. It's all about looking in your rear view mirror and laughing basically at whoever's behind you. And if the only person you're laughing at in your rear view mirror is the guy who everybody right now is agreeing should be dropping the course, not taking the test, giving up on their MBA dreams, where does that really put you on the GMAT? That's just real talk. Like, the only guy I laugh at is the guy who's trying to get a 700. Right now, if I'm in choice C, I'm laughing at the guy who's struggling to get a 300 on this exam. Think about that for a second. So, in my opinion, choice C is a crap answer, but it's a low-level trap, so I'll kind of maybe give it that much. Question for you. What is the high-level trap answer? The answer choice that is arguably the most popular answer on the board that's wrong, that comes pretty damn close, but it falls a step short. Because, I don't know, you're a little bit arrogant. You ain't so lazy, but you are a little lazy. You're just arrogant. Exactly. Remember, I love it when we can start to agree on things, guys. Yesterday in sense correction was a little carnage from time to time, but yeah, we can agree on this. It is definitely statement 1, choice A. Because this ain't hard. You see this, if you don't see difference of squares, log off, go back to week 2. You clearly know that's just an x minus y and x plus y. And at that point, you're like, okay, if you give me an x plus y, I can pop that in, clearly a 0. Super sufficient. I don't got to do jack. Statement number 2, x plus y. Well, if I plug that shit in, I can't get anything done. No way that's sufficient. Choice A, final answer. I have zero problem if that's where the vast majority of you went immediately on this question. None whatsoever. It's kind of like sentence questions. I gave you guys quite a bit of free passes if you remember, and I'm not a guy who gives a lot of free passes, as long as that's where you start, not where you end. Because if this is where I start, guess what, dude? It took me 27 seconds to get here. I got another minute 33 at this point to wind my way out of here, either looking up or looking down. Now, looking down, we know is a joke, because choice C, as a reminder, the second clause tells you that neither statement alone is sufficient, and that's not the case on this one. You clearly know statement 1 was sufficient. So right now, I'm thinking to myself, there's a pretty strong likelihood that choice D is probably the right answer. I just got to show more respect. Because one thing we'll talk about in the next hour, when we get into the common constructs of sorts, is when something is painfully obviously sufficient in terms of one statement, which I would kind of argue statement 1 is. Again, 90% of you basically saw statement 1 being super sufficient. All that tells you, remember I tell you that as a 99er, the test maker is constantly whispering, sometimes yelling at me, clues to differentiate myself from the rest of the people in the cubicles at the test centers to allow me past that little velvet rope, is he's telling me, dude, respect the F out of the second statement. Because it's going to be tough. Because if it's just as easy, what do you got? A 400 on this test? You don't want a 400. You want a 99, don't you? Yeah, that's right. Okay, then I will respect you. So when I look at statement 2, I don't get lazy. I don't get arrogant. I roll up my sleeves and I say, okay, game on. That's all I say. Game on. So question. When you look at statement number 2, what did the lazy and arrogant fail to do? What should I be able to see in statement number 2 that if I'm lazy and I'm arrogant, I will not? Yeah, I think that's great, Raju. I think that's solid. In this case, David and Katrina and Jason and Steven. Like, all you gotta do is bring this x over to the other side and you're already at y equals x. You know, like Min Young, excellent advice. Like, dude, that's like algebra guiding principle number 2, I think. Guiding principle number 1 was like multiply by 1. Guiding principle number 2, I think, was combine like terms. And so to me, like, absolutely. And thus, in this case, if I went one step further, as Raju had suggested, if I just bring the y over to the other side, I get a 0 is equal to x plus y. I don't need to do this. But my guess is if I had done this, it would have been readily clear that this shit's sufficient too, because it's just difference of squares. I can pop it in. But hell, even y equaling x is super sufficient. After all, if I have the same thing squared minus the same thing squared, that's obviously going to zero out. So yeah, you better believe choice D becomes now my new final answer. So look at the poll for a second. Because here's the best part. For the rest of the day, I'm going to be the good cop now. I don't even have to be the bad cop. The bad cop is going to be this thing. I love you, answer D. Exactly. You better believe I love you, answer D. Because if you look at this, this now tells you how bad your answer is. You can't, you could tune me out if you want. You can't tune this out. Because this basically says, hey, if you're in choice C, it's a crap answer. Because when you look up, you have no hope of getting there. Choice E, that is a drop the course answer. Because, man, so far you can't even smell a right answer if it came in, well, never mind. So my point is, as you start to go through this, you have to start to respect the question. And all it requires you to do is look up and look down. Nothing more than that, folks. So again, like I said, close to 90% within one level, but you guys screwed up the poll on me on this one. I want to take a look now at our first tough question of the day. We've only done 2 questions. This is now the first tough one. What makes this tough? Is it the math? I don't know. I don't think so. But it depends. Do you like to go through the drywall or do you like to go through the door? One of you just sent me a comment via private chat. I loved it. You love the drywall door. Of course, it's a great video. Like, am I going to do all the brute force math on this? Hell no. You know if you're doing it long, you're doing it wrong. Like, is this integer a prime number? Well, k is 10 factorial plus m. Punctuation sucks when it comes to quant, so it's like, do you want me to multiply out 10 factorial, figure out that number, and start to break all this down? Hell no. This ain't a math test, but a reasoning test. So let's showcase that reasoning here. Use conceptual understanding. Dumb it down. Remember, there's no shame to doing so. 9 hours we dumb things down all the damn time. Only shame comes from not doing it again. The question, well, you are a dumbass. You deserve to get it wrong. Don't let that happen. You've got to check that ego at the door. Very important in order to succeed that we're able to admit our inabilities at times. So as we go to town on this question, again, all I need you to do is look up, look down. If any answer seems too easy to you, let's put 2 on the clock. Let's get this done. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. So this is kind of a bad showing at this point. It's a bad showing, which is starting to worry me a little bit. Because the question is, are we starting to just guess, which is bad. We don't want to just be guessing. We want to at least try to dumb things down. And like I said at the very beginning, I think that is such an important thing to keep in mind as a strategy that is viable to getting these questions cracked wide open. If not, then I'm likely to struggle unnecessarily. So first thing I want to get at is obviously statement number 2. Does it involve punctuation? Everybody should start there. How is someone going to screw up statement number 2, folks? Again, forget sufficient or insufficient on this one. What does someone do and eat it as a result? What math is there to do on statement number 2? Yeah, excellent, excellent, excellent. So you guys are saying, yeah, dude, they forget about the 7. Absolutely. Like, statement number 2 is supposed to be, I think, a gimme on this question. Nobody should be in statement number 2 at all, meaning the B, D options. At all. And 15% of you or 14% of you tap out right now. Like, what the F? Like, my guess is what you said is, all right, well, maybe it's a 14, 21, 28, 35. Okay, that's a no, that's a no, that's a no, no. No is clearly good to go. He said that at the beginning. All right, let's move on. And it's like, that's true. But I also said in the beginning, you got to learn to pick with purpose. And were you picking with purpose there, or were you just picking just to pick? Because as far as I can tell, you gave yourself a bunch of no's, and you would have continued to give yourself a bunch of no's, because all you're doing is picking multiples of 7, and by definition, a prime only has 2 factors, one in itself. And you're not going down that road that way. So did you stop and try to think, slow down so you could speed up? Did you say, hey, what would give me a yes answer that involves a 7? And maybe you said to yourself, well, a 7 would give me a yes answer. I just don't know if 7 is a multiple. And if that's the case, I'm okay with that. I don't love it, but I can live with it. Because all I got to say is, well, what exactly is a multiple? Well, maybe the third or fourth most important formula not in your skill builder from arithmetic is, hey, a factor times an integer is what yields me a multiple. So, can I have a 7 with 7 as a factor multiplied by some integer there to get me? Of course I can. It's a 1. And thus, I did not know it because I suck at math, but I just reasoned out that 7 is a multiple of 7, using a dumbed down example to get me there. So even if I get this question wrong, at least I'm getting it wrong in a 1 in 3 way. And similar to yesterday's sentence correction, it is this level of efficiency that so many of these DS questions have built into the system. Just because it's you start with a statement, whatever statement you want, and then you can eliminate a bunch of things immediately, that makes this partly a good reason to be your new best friend. But now I got to get into statement number 1. But before we go too far, I want to establish something first. Clearly we know k is an integer. Looking at statement number 1, you agree that we cannot say that m is an integer, right? M could be a fraction. We want to make sure we're all on the same page on this one. Assumptions will bury you on this test. Agree? Disagree? What do you think? Okay. Why are you guys agreeing? Why are some of you disagreeing? Where are the rest of you? Yeah, I know k is an integer. But what does that got to do with m? There we go. And I think we're starting to get there. And it's important that we start to be critical. Exactly, Carl. Hey, and this is all right. This is where the light bulb moments start to come. And they go off. And this is where, again, this question is not as important. But I need these things to kind of resonate. Because on other questions, when the stuff gets tough, you need to be able to go, oh yeah, I remember in class where he tried to F us. Exactly. And so here, when you look at this, you realize, like, wait a minute, this is an integer. This is an integer. Of course this has to be an integer. It can't be anything else. So really, what you drywall tastes terrible. Yeah, drywall is not good for your health. The one thing that you want to start to realize is that this is really a 2 through 7 inclusive and integers only. So what is it that I want you to do? Dumb this shit down. Like, there's no shame in doing so. Write out all the numbers. And then I got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, do I want to sit here and do all this math? No way. I suck at math. This ain't a math test. You know that by now. What should I see if I'm looking for something? Remember, it's all about pattern recognition on this exam. Don't tell me, oh, multiple values, that ain't sufficient. I got no time for that. What do I want to start to recognize on this one? So in this case, that's what I want to see, David. I'll be honest, I'm kind of not understanding what some of you guys are saying, but if you guys are getting to the same place as what David and Jonathan are saying, then I'm happy. Because notice, I just wrote out all the different M's that we could have. There's 6 different options here. But every single one of them is a factor. Every single one. And remember what we said was the most important formula not in your arithmetic skill builder? M plus or minus M getting me to M. Multiples plus or minus multiples getting me to multiples. Like, to me, awesome, Jacob, you know? Like, again, this is the stuff that I want us to start to be looking out for, because no one's got time to do brute force math on this. You'll get 0 points from a style points judge who's watching you. Remember, that's the way I want us to be thinking always. Awesome, Angelique. So here, I don't know what any of these numbers equal, but I do know this will be no, 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 and this will be no. And if I have no always, that's as good as yes always. That's as good as 1 no or 1 yes. And guess what? They're all effing sufficient. Choice A, final answer as a result. Is it a coincidence that choice C is the #1 wrong answer on the board? F that. Hell no, it always is. Why? Because if you're at a company trying to get a job done, who cares about spending the company's dime? Throw all the shit at the wall and see if it sticks. You're going to get fired, folks. You don't want to waste the company's money. Now notice here how many people were within 1 level on this question. Arguably close to 93%. Once again, starting to show for the first-ish time, but maybe second-ish, that 90% of the time, if you're going to make a mistake, it's going to be off by 1 level. Very important to start to recognize that. Now, I also want to be clear. Notice how many D's we have on the board, even the B's on the board. That might suggest for a split second, according to this reward system, that they are better answers than choice E, which is arguably so far away that even if E looks up, still not getting to the right place. And what I would say to you is, I disagree with this reward system at that point. I think E is a perfectly fine answer on this question compared to what I would say are complete fails on the BD tip. You should not be in B, you should not be in D. To me, that's a low-level mistake to be making. I don't care if you saw the sufficiency of statement 1, which isn't likely. But to me, you can't eat it on statement 2 because that's a false negative. You're better than that is what I would argue. All right, with that then, I want to take a look at this next question here. Notice it says, is y a positive number? Statement 1 says 2x plus y is greater than 27. Statement 2 says x minus 3y is less than 24. What answer choices should you be down to immediately on this question without you doing a lick of math, but just saying, hey, I know this much about quant. I am only going to consider these options. What would they be? Hey. So let's rewind back. You know what I feel like? I feel like people do not know what the damn answer choices mean, guys. So for those of you that are saying C and E, you are correct. Everybody else is 100,000 million, billion, gajillion wrong. And I want to put that out there very vehemently on this one. I cannot be saying A, I cannot be saying B, I cannot be saying D. Shit, I can't even be saying C, I can't even be saying E. I gotta say C or E. That's it. Think about why here for a second. It's asking you, is Y positive? How the F am I going to answer something if you got X in the mix here? For me to go beyond that is ballsy. I'm not ballsy. I'm very judicious as I go through these questions. It should be C or E, and that's it. Now, whether it is C or whether it's E, I don't know. Let me figure it out. How am I going to do it? Remember what I said. The less wording involved, the more algebra I think is entailed. This is basically asking me, is Y greater than 0? That screams out algebra. I'll give you 30 seconds to do this question. It should not take you 30 seconds if you bothered to read my email from last week, let alone if you bothered to actually do something about week 2 algebra and a skill that was very important then. 30 seconds, let's figure this out. Is it C or is it E? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. I love the comment that just came my way, although maybe it came a while ago, because I see the student pieced out. Because it's quite fitting. This is an algebra question. If you get this wrong, it's not because you suck at data divinity, you just suck at algebra. That's okay. Figure it out and do something about it. Don't sit here and live and die off every stupid practice test score. Already you know those are useless in some sense. Get the real value. Figure out what you're not good at, get better at it. And so I love this student's attitude because it's not one of like, oh, you hurt my feelings. I really think I'm great at everything in life. And it's like, no, it's okay. We all have weaknesses, some in areas that are strengths for others. You ain't going to get great at this test unless you attack it head on. So, obviously, when you have inequalities, you know you're supposed to add them when they're heading in the same direction. What should I multiply this second inequality by here, folks, just to get this job done instantly here? What makes good algebraic sense? Yeah, awesome, Patrick, Tommy, Mignon, Katrina. Be careful. Excellent, Raju, Felipe, Anta. Because those of you saying D, it's not going to get the job done. You want to multiply by a negative because a negative will flip this direction. Then, of course, this becomes a negative 2x. This becomes a positive 6y. And this becomes a negative 48. Then what do? Add 7y greater than negative 21. Y is greater than negative 3. You don't need 30 seconds to do that. That's just a gift from the GMAT gods. Basic algebra. It's important you get there. Because y being greater than negative 3. Is that positive? Maybe. It could be negative, it could be 0, it could be positive. I could get a bunch of yeses, I could get a bunch of nos. Hell no. is that going to be sufficient? But look how many people were so happy picking choice C. Terrible in my opinion. Maybe you just decided, hey, 2 equations, 2 variables, you can get it done. Maybe. But didn't you learn shit from week 2 algebra, which basically says with inequalities, you got to be so careful about what side of the inequality things fall on. Because remember, if this were y is greater than 3 or y is less than -3, either one of those options, either one, would have given you C as an answer. Rightfully so, because y is greater than 3, always yes. Y is less than -3, always no. I don't know what they are. I know they're always yes or always no. But it's this guy where you're stuck kind of in the middle, shrugging your shoulders. That's what causes the insufficiency there. So these ain't like equations, people. Go back to week 2 algebra. Put these inequalities to rest. You cannot afford to get a question like this and get it wrong. Again, that's my opinion if I'm looking to crush this damn section. There's a lot of tough quant questions out there. This is not an example of one. This is one where you just want to get money in the bank. That said, speaking of tough quant questions, I want to take a look at this second quant question that I think is tough. And by the way, this is not even a tough quant question. I think it's a tough data sufficiency question. Because what's going to happen on this question is that you will pick your answer, if you're in the sucker answer, and you will feel good about it. You'll feel like you did the question right. My advice to you, once that feeling of goodness takes over, is just look up and look down and make sure you're in the right place. Make sure that you shouldn't be on another level. And if you should be on another level, for all you can do, you should just move. If you don't know the sucker, you're in it. Very important to start to see this. Let's put 2 on the clock and then we'll talk. All right, guys, I want to get into this question here. Before I do, I want to comment on a pseudo question that I just got, and I should have probably copied and pasted it into the main chat so we could see and I can respond properly, but I'll just summarize it right now. And it was some guy basically saying to me, like, dude, what advice you got for me when I found myself second guessing answers? So like, I'm about to pick my answer, but then I start second guessing and I start talking myself out, and then maybe I make a boneheaded move. Now, at the same time, the guy then started to answer his own question, because I think it is a bit commonsensical, the answer. Because he's like, well, maybe I just need to work more on that content and the underlying skill so then I can have some more confidence. Because this guy's foundation is questionable at best, at least for a 99er level that my guess is he'd love to be at. And I think that's absolutely the case. Like, some of us have a lack of confidence with some of these questions, and the reason for it is because the underlying fundamentals aren't there. Like, there are quite a few questions that I have no problem with confidence on because I understand the fundamentals. And then there are questions where I have a problem with confidence on because I don't understand the fundamentals. And that's okay. But remember what we're trying to do. Just get questions right that we are capable of doing. There are going to be plenty of stuff you don't know how to do, 99ers included. Who cares? Get the stuff you know how to do and you'll be good. And so for me, as we start to go through some of these questions, like this one right here, this is a fail. Like, dude, I gave you guys a takeaway last week on how to do this shit. Like, spoon-fed it to you. Whether you chose to read it, internalize it, practice it, that's now on you. But I can't get questions like this wrong. There's no deception here. This is just effing mechanics. But on a question like this, I could see how someone could screw this up. Not with some of the responses in the poll, though. Some of these are atrocious. But the classic #1 wrong answer in the poll, I get it. But that's more of a disrespect issue more than anything else. You understand the math, you're just a bit disrespectful. You tap out a little bit too early in the game. You look at this reward system and say, why does this guy keep wasting his damn ink up there writing it? Maybe it's not a waste. Did you consider that? So first question for you. What is the sucker answer on this question? What do you know will be the #1 wrong answer on the board here? Because people are just content to do a little bit and then presume that they did a lot. You know, activity is achievement. I'll go through the motions and then I'll feel good about the move that I just made. Yeah, let that shit rain down out of the sky, folks. It is choice C all effing day long. And again, if you're in choice C at some point to start, I'm not mad. But I can't have you be there to end. And that's where simply looking up and looking down becomes all important. Now, let's just break this question down very quickly and start to figure out which way we want to go. It says if x is a positive integer less than 30. So integer x positive means it's between 0 and 30. It wants to know if it's odd. Okay, that's the question in a nutshell. Statement 1 says when x is divided by 3, the remainder is 2. This is just a multiples question. You know in arithmetic how I like to translate these. X is basically a multiple of 3 plus 2. Statement 2 is the same thing. X is a multiple of 5 plus 2. Remember, that's just INT for integer. Am I going to pick numbers here? Hell no. It's a low-level way to process these questions. All I'm going to say is, hey, I know that if I add 2, which is an even number, to any number, it will preserve the same underlying evenness, oddness of the original number. And there are multiples of 3 within this range that are even and odd. Thus, I will get sometimes yes, sometimes no. Same thing, multiples of 5 within this range that are even and odd. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Therefore, A, B, and D out immediately. Get this wrong, I don't care. B and C or B and E. 15% of you almost ended up in the AD world. It blows my mind. I don't understand it. Talk to me. Explain it. Tell me it was a random guess. I could live with it. Don't tell me I was confident this was the right answer, because that screams out I need a lot of help. And that's okay. Figure it out now, though. Start hitting up office hours every day. Now, of course, if I want to pick some values, I could. I could just plug a 1 in there for the integer, and I could get a 5. Or I could plug a 2 in there for that integer and I'd get an 8. Same thing down here. Plug a 1 in there and I'd get a 7. Plug a 2 in there and I'd get a 12. These would be yeses. These would be nos. Clearly, it's not sufficient. Not that I would do this, but I could. So thus, when I combine them, what do I get? Clearly, x is a multiple of 15. That's pretty easy to get to, plus 2. And of course, that means x is 17. And like I said, 86% of you got this far, which is great. But remember what I said, the GMAT is only designed to do one thing, weed people out. Not everyone here can go to Columbia. One of you was having a call earlier with a Columbia student, and you didn't suck her out, which is good. But not everyone can go. We got to weed people out. And in fact, at least you're telling me in the main chat room that it's the sucker answer, which is good. You need that hyper-awareness. So question for you. What should I have then done next? If I'm respecting the game and I'm looking down and saying, maybe I can't get this done at all, what value should I be able to recognize would give me a different answer on this question here? Because clearly here I got a yes answer. But there's a no in the mix. What is it that I need to see here in order to stick the landing? Yeah, that's it. Absolutely right. And so when you look at something like this and you plug a 0 in there, you get x equals 2. And again, multiple values isn't the problem. It's the fact that this yields me a no. This yields me a yes. I'm left shrugging my shoulders. I can't do this. Choice E becomes the best answer as a result. Now notice how many people are within one level. 86%. You guys are again making me look bad. As a reminder, check it again. This ain't me anymore. If this is the right answer, those of you in A and B, it's a bad move. It's a bad move. Even if you look down a level, you still have no hope of getting to the right answer. And then look at the island of a response in choice D. You're not off by 1 level. You're not even off by 2 levels. You're off by 3 effing levels. That screams out, drop the course. Again, that's not me anymore. That's just the reward system doing it for you. So today, when I'm saying you're making me look bad, what I mean is all the people in the A and D right now, because I already went out on a limb and said, hey, 90% of the answers are going to be within 1 level. And I'm always right about that. The fact that I'm not here today makes me look like I don't know what I'm talking about, but that ain't the case. You guys, by getting into these, we'll call them dog shit answers right now, are starting to F things up in the poll. And I want us to start to realize that, because then we start to see, hey, there are fundamental math deficiencies here that we need to start to treat. This isn't like, oh yeah, let me just brush it under the rug. Like, it's okay that I didn't see that there are multiple even and odds up in the mix there. No, that's not acceptable. All right, I'm done with this section here. Next up is learning how to play the game. To me, this last hour is the most important hour. But again, like everything else, things just keep building and building and building. If your mind is awake, ready to soak things up, you're understanding and crushing, great. If not, again, no shame at all, saying, you know what? This is now over my head. I should come back later, watch the 3rd hour. Shit, let's be honest, probably watch hour 1 and hour 2 once I'm ready and more prepared. Do it. Whatever it takes. But this is where I think things get good. Let's take 5 and then we'll get back to work. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into this next section, which is all about learning to play the game. In this section here, there are some things that I want to keep in mind, starting off with the 2 wrong answers. And then we'll kind of get into some of these other aspects to it that I think are important to keep in mind. So this first reminder of sorts comes in the form of this slide here. I actually think this is one of the best slides of the day. And it just captures for you in one place what the only 2 mistakes one can make on data sufficiency look like. Now, you might look at this slide and say, this is a joke of a slide. Like, what the hell am I supposed to get from this? And I kind of see that viewpoint as well. It's kind of a Captain Obvious type level of slide. You know, you mean one mistake I can make is I think I don't have enough info, but I really do. Like, I want to say it's not sufficient, but it's sufficient. Or on the exact opposite end, it's I think I've got enough info, but I don't. I want to say it's sufficient, but it's not. Like, I'm supposed to effing learn something from this? And I'd say, yeah, you actually can. Because what I would say to you is just when you see these commas, kind of slam on the brakes. And then respond differently. So what I like to do is when I come to the comma, I stop and consider the possibility that either I do or that I don't. So I want to say not sufficient. Slam those damn brakes before I hit that answer and hit submit or confirm. And say, well, is it possible that I actually do have enough info? I know what my knee-jerk response was, but let me kind of check myself a little bit. Same thing down here. I want to say I've got enough info. Let me stop, slam those brakes, and consider the possibility that maybe I don't. Having that level of, again, healthy paranoia allows you not to get jacked by the test maker over and over and over again. That's where respect fundamentally comes into the picture. So look at this example here. It says, a mixed nut recipe calls for a fixed ratio of whole peanuts to whole cashews of 7:3. How many peanuts are in a bag? Statement 1 says each bag must contain between 95 and 105 nuts. Sufficient, not sufficient, I don't effing know. It's like, there's so many damn nuts here. How am I going to figure this out? Clearly, I don't got enough info. It's not hard to get to that point. Doesn't mean that's the point I want to get to, though. Because before I tap out and call it a day, I'm going to slam on those effing brakes and I'm going to say, hey, wait a minute. Is it possible that actually I do have enough info? Let me just try to get as much as I can out of the actual question and statement and everything else that I know about the quant side of things and leverage those damn assets. Because if I take a step back and I realize that in word problems, words matter, and the most important word in this question, in my opinion, is the word whole, then I realize the test maker is kind of yelling at me. Not whispering, but just yelling, hey, you idiot, this is an effing integer, man. Don't lose sight of that. And when he does that, it then becomes a much easier question. Because then if it's 7:3 and I know that means there's 10 total parts, that's a week 1 ratio concept. Then over here I need 1 multiple 10. There's only one of them, that's a week 1 arithmetic concept. Like I realize there's 100 nuts between 70 and 30, so boom, this is super sufficient. I'm done with this question. I almost ate it, but thankfully I slammed those brakes with that healthy level of paranoia and considered the possibility that I actually had enough info. Now, how does this actually start to play into the whole reward system? Well, when you are on a, remember I kept saying all you got to do is look up a level and look down a level. So when I am on a lower level looking up, by definition, I'm trying to leverage assets. Because when you're on a lower level, you're always in a position of weakness. Like if I'm in choice E, I'm like, oh, I can't do anything. It's like, maybe you can. Choice C is where you can get done. If you're in C, like, oh, I can't do anything. I need both materials. It's like, no, maybe you can. You only need one. If you're in A or B, you're like, oh, I'm not that good. I can't do it with anything in the world. I just can only do it with this one company. But it's like, no, maybe you can do it with anything in the world. And so whenever you're down low and you're looking up one level, the key is to always be thinking, can I leverage my assets further? Sometimes it happens because you missed an inference. Sometimes it happens because a statement actually implies the other one. So you want to say, oh, I don't got enough info, I need the other guy, but you don't. It's already there. I want to now take a look at this second example. Very similar fact pattern. It says a mixed nut recipe calls for a fixed ratio of 7 ounces of peanuts for every 3 ounces of cashews. How many ounces of peanuts are in a bag? Each bag must have a minimum of 30 ounces and a maximum of 33 ounces. So similar fact pattern. So easy then to say, oh, you know what? Clearly, I have enough info. Because 7 and 3, 10, you ain't going to fool me second time on this. Multiple of 10, 30, boom, super sufficient, final answer. But it's like, all right, I get all that. But you never even slammed the damn brakes and considered the possibility that you don't have actually enough info. Did you even stop to think that maybe you might have missed something? You might have overlooked a scenario that could have given you a different response? Did you try to play devil's advocate, as they say? Like here, what did I do? I assumed things had to be an integer. That's how I overplayed my hand. I get it. Doesn't make it acceptable, though. When you are on a higher level in the DS reward system looking down a level, you are by definition in a position of power. Consider the possibility that you shouldn't be there and look down by playing that devil's advocate. So if I'm in D, you're like, don't worry about me, guys. I got this. Like, no, maybe you don't got it. Maybe you should be in A and B. You can only do it with one of them. If you're at A and B, you're like, oh yeah, I could do this. All I need is this one company to get it done. It's like, no, dude. Maybe you can't even get it done with that one company. You should be getting materials from both companies. Like if you're in C, like, oh yeah, don't worry about me. I got this. I'll get the job done. I need to buy 2 materials, but I'll still do it. It's like, no. Maybe you can't even do that, dude. Maybe you should be in E. So whenever you're high and you're looking low, all you're thinking is, hey, can I play that devil's advocate? Did I overlook a scenario which says I can't get this done? And that's what this is all about. Leveraging assets up, playing devil's advocate, looking down. But at the end of the day, it's that healthy level of paranoia saying, I know what my knee-jerk response is. Let me now consider the possibility that I'm wrong. That's what a 99er does. Now, check it. I'm not saying you need to do that on every single question. What I'm saying is you should do that on every single question where you don't respect it. You don't respect it comes about because you did not spend enough time on it, or because you didn't even bother to think about what the sucker move could be. If that's the case, this is applicable. Now, that being said, I want to take a look at this next question here. Notice it's under the header of 2 statements being better than 1. I think this is a very important concept to internalize. I don't think a lot of people get it or its significance. So let me try to break this down as best as I can. You will never see a question like this on test day. And that's a good thing. This is a tough question as it stands. The GMAT will always give you 2 statements. 2 statements are better than 1. Why? Because the GMAT, as you all can probably guess, does not allow cheating on this test. But as some of you will be shocked to learn, the GMAT instead rewards cheating on this exam. How do they reward it? Because 2 statements are better than 1. 99ers start to appreciate what a second statement's value starts to be. And I think this question here is a great illustration of just that. So here's all I want you to do. I want you to spend 30 seconds on this question. I just want you to tell me if it's sufficient or not. Again, just using the one statement that you got. Then we'll come back and we'll take a look at the question in its entirety and start to realize how, man, this is tough. But once you see it as a whole question, it's super easy. Let's talk when time's up. All right, let's look at this question here, folks. So if you looked at this question and you said, I don't know what's going on, let me dumb this down, excellent. That's the path to the 99. If you said, let me pick some numbers and see what works, so 8 and 1, and then count them up, I got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That gets me 6 integers. I think this is sufficient, but I'm not cocky. I will try this again. So how about 7 and 0? I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Clearly got me some 6 integers again. 6 is 6. Super sufficient is my move. I am fine with that. Again, all day long. But the best part is I'm never going to see a question like this. Instead, I'd see a question that looks like this. Vastly a much easier question. Of course, you'd start with statement number 2. This is an opinion, this is a fact. And when you see statement number 2, you'd appreciate how it's painfully obviously not sufficient, because all you're doing is telling me that A and B are integers. You're not giving me any indication of how many might be in play. So automatically you're down to an ACE scenario. But this is now where, as a 99er, your strategy takes over. Because what you learn shortly is that this starts to fit into what I would call, or what they call, the why are you here model. And the why are you here model is pretty straightforward. It just basically says, look, man, with something that's so painfully obviously not sufficient that if I ran a poll in here, my guess is 90% of you would clearly say it's not sufficient, and then a few of us would just tap out and just say, oh yeah, it is sufficient, and that's just a different issue that we need to treat. Then you have to ask one question. Why are you here? Statement number 2. Are you here to help me, or are you here to hurt me? When I look at statement number 1. So I'm not telling you you combine it with statement number 1 in your analysis. I'm just saying, hey, look, you cheat a little. Because it's rewarded. It ain't allowed. It's, in fact, rewarded. So when I look at statement number 1, I start to say, hey, does it matter whether A and B are integers? That's the correct analysis in statement number 1. It's not that, oh, B minus A is 7. It's B minus A is 7, and does it matter whether A and B are integers? So when I think that, you better damn well believe I set up my test that way. Meaning I say, okay, how about in this case 8 and 1? How about in this case 8.5 and 1.5? 8 and 1, I got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got 6 integers. Here I got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 7. 6 ain't the same as 7. Huh. I guess I need you, statement number 2. choice C would be my overall right answer to this question. I understand why so many of us said statement 1 was sufficient, but my hope is if you had 2 statements and you start to embrace that 2 statements are better than 1, you wouldn't have ended up there. This is important, folks. This is not quant, this is now DS strategy. So take a look at this example here. This is an easy one. We've seen iterations of this before. It says, is A over B greater than C? A is greater than BC. This ain't hard. Bring the B to the other side, and boom, super sufficient. But you'd never see that on test day, ever. You'd see a question that looks more like this. So, of course, if you're talking A's and C's, you'd want to be all up in statement number 2, clearly not sufficient. You'd be down to 1 and 3 within seconds. But what do? You look at statement number 1 and you say to yourself, why are you here, statement 2? Does it matter whether B is positive? And it's like, oh yeah, I got an inequality. If I got inequalities, you better well damn believe I need to know the signs. I can't decide statement 1 was sufficient. I almost did, but I stopped and I slammed the brakes and I said, maybe it's not. And using statement 2, not because cheating is allowed, it ain't, it's rewarded, I'm able to get this done. So even here, when you look at a question like this which says, hey, what's the value of m plus n? My hope is everybody jumps all up in statement number 2 here immediately. Why? Because you're talking J's, you're talking K's, you're not even talking M's and N's, B's and D's dead. This is 1 and 3 within seconds. You look at statement 1, you see a whole host of variables that ain't just M and N. You're down to C and E within another second. I don't even care what happens. Get this wrong, that's fine, move on. But at least you're 50-50. But now the job is to kind of move this forward. Well, it's like, well, wait a minute. This didn't even have an M and N in the mix. Why the F are you here? You here to help me? You here to hurt me? Why are you telling me what J plus K is? Well, when I look at statement number 1, I start to think of it as maybe a clue. Can I get J plus K by itself? If I can, then maybe, just maybe, this might be the key. So again, I think Min Young made a comment earlier. It's like, freaking combine some like terms, man. That's all you got to do. I see so much like term action over here. I got to stop being lazy. I got to stop being arrogant. Because remember, just go back to even what I said earlier. This fundamentally is, what is m plus n? And arguably, you don't need that language either. So it's m plus n question mark. That's the only wording there. This is equation. This screams out algebra. And if you can remember one damn thing about algebra, it's don't be lazy, don't be arrogant. So I look at statement number 1, I'm like, all right, go back to the guiding principles, one of which is just combine like terms. So if I start to pull out the like terms, I get the J out, pull the M plus N, get the K out, pull out that. Then I see M's and N's the same. I can pull out the M's and N's. That's just called factoring. And if you suck at that, go into Google, type in factoring exercises, worksheets, hit enter. Because this is now where this is just an inconvenient truth of that. And if instead of this, I have this laid out for me, what does that mean? This ain't hard anymore. I got to just plug that in. Of course I know what M and N are. I'm not going to tap out with choice E saying, oh yeah, 2 equations, 4 variables. I can't get this done. Because remember, they're not asking me about M. They're not asking me about N. They're asking me for the combination of them. And the fact that you're asking me for that combination of them itself is a clue to me as a 99er, looking for triggers and responses here, that maybe I don't got to get my hands all dirty up in there. I just got to be able to kind of get there in a style points friendly way. And so as you start to proceed through data sufficiency, if you start to approach it with the mindset that, you know what, I can only look at one statement at a time so that I don't mistakenly pick A or B when it's actually C. Let me put those blinders on there. This is the way I was taught. I get it. But you're leaving money on the table. You have to say, yeah, but. If the test maker's left a hint in that other statement, I can't just ignore that. I'd be an idiot for doing so. And that's where the chess and checkers, I think, starts to come into the picture. There's some great analogies there in the book. Take a look, read it. But to me, chess is high level, folks. Checkers ain't. And if you don't appreciate that every single move, every single question is just a game between you and the test maker, just trying to demonstrate that, hey man, I do deserve to go to Columbia or fill in the blank school. Let me at it. Let me get my free ride there. Don't get in my way. Get the F out. Like, if you don't have that sort of authoritative dominance, you will get dominated in a way that's not going to be enjoyable. All right, with that then, I want to shift gears here, get into this last segment, which is the power of construct thinking. Just want to go through a couple questions here, and we'll slowly call it a night. Some of these are just identifiable models that repeat over and over. I want us to start to see them and start to take a look at questions when they appear in that context. So the first we'll start with is the why are you here model. And again, I already talked about this a little. It's when a statement is clearly insufficient. It's there for one of two reasons. It's either there as necessary info to go with the other statement, aka it's a chance to save yourself from making a bad decision. It's there to help you. Or it's bait. Info you think you need, but you don't. AKA, it's a chance to make a bad decision. It's there to hurt you. I am not suggesting for one split second that by merely asking why are you here, you'll get the question right. Hell no, that's delusional. But what I am saying to you is by asking the question, you increase your odds exponentially of you being able to stick the landing and not get jacked in the process. So all you got to do whenever you see something that's painfully, obviously insufficient, just ask one question: why are you here? So with that, then I want to take a crack at this next question. I think it's a great question, not a tough question, but note it is under the header, why are you here? Which means, in theory, one of these statements is painfully, obviously not sufficient. I'm not going to tell you which. My hope is everyone can find it. And more important than that, eliminate at least one of these answers right off the bat without even looking at the damn problem. If you can't do that, that means you don't effing know what these answer choices mean. It's week 4. How do you not know the DS answer choices? Inexcusable. You cannot be dicking around either A, picking the damn wrong answers, or B, reading them. With that, let's put a minute and a half on the clock. Let's bring some respect. If you don't know the sucker, you're in it. I'll throw this reward system up just for kicks. Again, 90% of you will be within one level. Don't be picking the sucker on me. Let's talk when time's up. All right, excellent work on this question, guys. Excellent. I have not said that once today, and that kind of disappoints me. But on this one, excellent effing work. Not one single person, and I really did fear, was going to pick D. You know D is impossible. If you know that one of these statements is not sufficient, it's impossible for D to ever be correct. Impossible. The sad part is, I did have somebody pick choice B, suggesting statement 2 is Exactly. Today's the day. It's almost time to end class. Maybe this is a sign from the GMAT gods. But yes, there was, I probably did say that, and it probably did get bleeped. It's a good thing we got Veritas censors there. Man, oh man. All right. Where was I? I think I was railing on B here. Most people avoided. Oh man, Angela, you're gonna throw that shade at me now? I guess I have to be good at getting if I give it as much as I give it. So fine, I'll let you have a free pass. So here's what I'm gonna say on this one. Oh man, no, I don't. At this point, oh, you say that, Molly. Here's what I will say as we get into this question. Whatever, Miss Cardoza, you're so damn lazy you can't even type the damn comments. You just piggyback off her. Get your shit together. All right. Here's what I'm going to say as we get into this question here. Nobody should be picking choice B. My hope is, Megan's telling me it looks like it's fake news in the poll, which is good. Because like there's zero chance this makes any sense. So really this comes back to all about statement 1. Well, why you gotta join Tony's camp on this one, Felipe? Tony hasn't thrown any shade at me today. Oh, Tony may not be here. See, Tony's smart today. So here's what I'd say to you guys. Look at statement number 1. Statement number 1 says x squared is less than x. Your job when you look at statement number 1 is, again, to cheat. Cheating isn't allowed, cheating is rewarded. And when you look at statement number 1, you say, hey, is it important that I know whether x is positive? That's what your first level of analysis needs to be. And so when you look at it, you could say, well, could it be negative? A negative squared ain't going to be less than a negative because it'd be positive, so it can't be negative. What's the opposite of positive? It ain't negative, it's non-positive, so could it be 0? 0 squared is not going to be less than 0. Thus, if it can't be negative and it can't be 0, statement number 1 forces me to be positive. Which means statement number 2, I don't need you. You're already cleverly implied within statement number 1. And thus, statement number 2, I ain't gonna pick choice C either. So C is out, D is out. This comes down to fundamentally A versus E on this one. And if you're in A or you're in E, huge win. Except that's not the case. The number 1 wrong answer is always choice C. Today is no different. Because people don't care about 2 statements being better than 1. Nobody cares about why are you here. But if I'm in choice C, I'm asking myself, why am I here? I ain't trying to even apply the strategies that I'm trying to learn in here. I'm activity, and thus I think it's achievement. Hell no. So now if I think about this, and I know that x is already positive, the only question is it between 0 and 1? I could do this algebraically, and for those of you gunning for a 90-some percentile on the quant side, I would probably learn how to do quadratic inequalities. It's not terribly challenging. It does involve factoring. It sets things up equal to or less than or 0 or greater than 0 and playing a sign game. But you don't need that on this question. All you got to do is try a value between that and try a value that's above it and see what works. All right, if I pick a value like 2, is 2 squared less than 2? No, that doesn't even comply. Go back to what we said earlier. You got to pick values that comply. So then I pick a value in between, like 1/2. Is 1/2 squared less than 1/2? Yeah, you bet. 1/4 is less than 1/2. So looks like statement 1 is super sufficient. In fact, if you were to do it algebraically and solve, you would end up getting that as the solution. Like, this is an inconvenient way of writing that. Hey, is the sky blue? The sky is blue. Is that sufficient? Hell yeah, it is. And so as you start to go through these questions here, you don't need to be an algebra machine on this one. You just need to use some of this strategy that we're talking about. All right, take a look at this guy right here. I think this is a good one. It says, what do you know about statement 2 without even looking at it? It says, last year the company X produced more trucks than company Y. So is X more than Y? Statement 1 says, last year company X produced 205,000 trucks and company Y produced 150,000 trucks. Is that enough? Well, you basically gave me everything I need. X's number, Y's number, of course this is enough. This is like stupid, ridiculously sufficient. But then what does that tell me about statement number 2? What we started talking about earlier. Respect the F out of it. Otherwise, you're going to get hammered by it. It's probably going to be somewhat tricky. So I want to look at this example here because I think this is a good illustration of it. It says for iso triangle LMN, so iso LMN, what is the measure of angle N? Now this is a bit of a more complex geo question, so I just want to set it up. Come back and revisit this next week after you guys do the skill builder. Look at what statement 1 says. It says the lengths of all 3 sides are the same. If all sides are the same, you know it's equilateral, you know all the angles, super sufficient, A or D. Pretty easy to get to within seconds. So what does statement 2 say? L measures 60. L, it is not a typo. You want to know about N. You're giving me L? What a waste of my time. Move right on. That's what the sucker does. He doesn't respect the question. He doesn't respect the test. He doesn't respect the test maker. All he sees in his eyes is a 760 and a free ride to Columbia. And that ain't going to happen. Not with this type of move. Because you didn't respect the second statement. You didn't say, well, maybe it's kind of challenging. Because when you go back next week and revisit this, you'll realize that if I ever have an iso triangle with 60 degrees in the mix, that's actually code for equilateral. And thus statement number 2 was super sufficient. I should have been in D, but I got my ass handed to me in A. So for me, as I take away something from this question, if anything seems so damn obvious that it's sufficient, you better tread lightly around the other statement. This is a good question, guys. I want you guys to take a look at this later. When you guys get to it, I want you to keep this in mind here. I think there's some good advice here. I think a lot of times people walk into trap answers because they don't even think for a second that it can be challenging. It says here, I don't want it if it's that easy. I think that's the mentality you want to have. Take a look at this later. I want to take a look at 1 or 2 more questions and then kind of call it a night. By looking at this one next. Notice what this says. It says, what is the value of X? What do you think is the classic knee-jerk response to this question? What do you think someone's likely to pick if they had 5 seconds to do it? What would be their answer on this question? Yeah, this isn't hard. You look at this and you're like, okay, not sufficient, not sufficient. Like, obviously, you should get it down to 50-50 within seconds. 2 equations, 2 variables, like, I don't even need 2 minutes. I could do this in 5. And it's like, okay. But what is being tested there? Remember, you always have to think like, who's in my rear view mirror? So you mean to tell me the guy who's going to get this question wrong is going to be the guy that doesn't realize you need more than 1 equation, or you like I just don't get it. Like, who's getting this wrong? Of course C has to be right. And it's like, well, what? Show some respect. So yeah, in week 2, what do you learn? You need n unique linear equations. The reward system says look up, look down. Clearly not A or B. I can't get this done with 1 equation. I just got to consider the possibility that I can't. And going back to those unique and linear, I say, hey, I got linear. Do I got unique? That's kind of where I want us to start to, again, not just knee-jerk respond. And thus you start to realize, like, wait a minute. These are the same damn equations. And if they're the same equations, just having more of it isn't going to get me any closer to the right answer. Shit. I should have been in choice E. And the test maker almost got me. And so, we start talking about these C-trap type questions as well, where you just want to throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. And in this case, yeah, it comes close, but it doesn't do the job. And so just be careful on that kind of stuff. All right, with that, then I want to take a look at this last question. I think this is a nice question here. And again, I want you to show some serious respect on it. I think it's going to feel easy, but it shouldn't feel easy, not if you're doing it right. Let's put 2 on the clock, and then we'll talk, and then let's wrap this thing up. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this. Love the comment that came my way at some point. Sorry, just getting to things. But I've now cleared out my chat queue. Because it's just a sign of someone who just now starts to really get it. This shit ain't rocket science. Anybody can crush this test. You just have to start to understand what it's about. Day one, hour one sets you up for that. And starting now to be on the lookout, top of the pyramid style, allows you to dismantle this with ease. Just play with it and rock its world. So question for you. What is the sucker move on this question? What is likely to be the number one wrong answer here? Because you just disrespect it. You feel good that you got there, but man, oh man, is it a bad move. Ugh. I didn't ask you what answers you should be down to immediately. What the F? So let's get this out of the way. This isn't good. I'm not happy with what I'm seeing here. So let's take a look at this for a second. 96% or so came up to C or E. Funny enough, PU, D is not a trap, but I see frickin' D on the board and it makes me want to, like, I don't know, just quit right now. Because I'm wondering, why is D on the board? There is no way you can be in D for the same reason no one can be in A or no one can be in B, because you're talking to me about TVs, no radios, radios, no TVs. Like, what the F? I can't do anything with that. This is C or E instantly. So what is someone likely to do on this question? Obviously, pick choice E. You can't do this. I can't add or subtract. I don't know the original quantities. Okay, that's fine. Question, what am I missing when I make that move? I'm overplaying my hand in such a big way. And to me, that's the problem. Yeah, awesome, Carl. Excellent, Natalie. And I'm not going to throw shade at you, Molly, although that 11 there, I don't know what that means, although I understand you. I'm just teasing. Exactly, Nick. What the F, David? Solid, Katrina. You were killing things here, David. Where did the train go off the tracks with you today, man? It's been a long day for us all. I woke up at 4 o'clock today, man. My wife's like, dude, you're a madman. And I've been freaking working all day long. Now I'm ready to call it a day. But yes, absolutely, to David's point and to Carl's point and to the rest of you, like, what makes this hard is this ugly shit. Like, if they didn't say 132 and 77, but instead they had said 12 TVs and 7 radios, I don't think one single exactly, Megan. I don't think one single person would have picked choice E. I really don't. I do have that level of faith at this point. But then what fun would that be? They're able to weed out half of you fools right now because you're disrespectful. You just throw your hands up in the air going, oh yeah, I remember the takeaway. Can't add or subtract. Is that all the takeaway is? Because yeah, in some sense you're kind of correct, but kind of correct is like a 60 on the GMAT. It's kind of like a 760 minus a 700 extra points being thrown in. It's not a coincidence that they gave you these numbers. These numbers are intentionally designed there. Is it a coincidence that it's on the 15 by 15 grid? There's no effing coincidence, man. So yeah, I don't know what the original quantity is, but like you guys correctly deduced, if I'm preserving the same ratio, of course this shit's sufficient. Choice C, final answer all day long. And again, notice on this, within one level, how many are there? 96%. Is D an atrocious answer? I'd say so, because it ain't even 1 level off, it's 2 levels off. It ain't as bad as being 3 levels off, but still, that ain't me telling you it's bad. That's the reward system. And so just to kind of end the night here, answer choice E doesn't really mean I can't do it. Make sure you realize that. Answer choice E means it can't be done. Like Albert Einstein himself couldn't do this. I have to prove that to be the case. Now, how do you prove the impossible? At least go through the motions and say, well, this is what I would need in order for it to work, or something like that. But on that question there, clearly, man, oh man, it can be done. Because remember what choice E, how many people are going to pick choice E? Because I know some of you picked choice E because at least you knew that takeaway. Some of you picked choice E because you're like, what the F? I don't even know how to read. It's 7 o'clock or, God forbid, like 10 o'clock out on the East Coast. Like, I'm so damn tired right now. All I see is just a freaking blob talking. Let me just pick something and move on. I can't do this shit. You want to be rewarded that same way? Hell no. You have to earn the right to pick it to win it. All right, this is where they talk about the reward system. Take a look at that. But again, I've kind of hammered that point home. There was one last question here, but I'm done for the night here. So what is DS, folks? DS is more than a type of math question. My sincerest hope is that you've at least appreciated that today. If by the end of these 3+ hours you still think DS is just a math question, I'm sorry, I've tried. But if you look at DS now as it being a fundamental strategic game that you can beat and win at, if you just understand not only the rules, but the way the test maker thinks, dude, you're ready to start crushing half of the quant section as these questions get tough, and you should welcome it as an opportunity. All right, we're done for today. What's in store for next week? Monday's lesson's advanced verbal. Note the word advanced. If I have shitty verbal skills, Monday is not the day where I'm going to come to class and shine. Hell, Monday's the day I'll probably come to class and get question wrong after wrong after wrong and not get anything out of it. So, the one thing that I would say to you, is there's no shame at all to saying, you know what, my underlying skill set sucks in the world of verbal, let me work on that instead of coming to class for 3 hours and doing stuff that's above my pay grade. In fact, I would say it's the intelligent move. If that's not you, and you are consistently in the 70s in the percentile scale of things, then I would say come to class, it's a great lesson. But as preparation for Monday's lesson, come to class having rewatched potentially week 2 critical reasoning. It's been a long time that we've done some critical reasoning, arguably, in here. And on Monday's lesson is very critical reasoning heavy. So it'd be serving you well to do it that way. Because just as a reminder, I said in week 2, I don't teach you how to do beginner critical reasoning and advanced critical. I teach you how to do it from the get-go, how to do it on a high level. And hopefully if you go back and revisit, you'll see it's all scalable. Monday's lesson will actually be rather easy. That's Monday's lesson. Wednesday's lesson is geometry. Tough lesson because there's a lot to cover, and geometry is not innate, meaning there's a lot of us that don't know trapezoidal relationships unless we sit there and spend some time memorizing it. That's okay, no shame to doing it, but do it. You ain't gonna be able to fake your way on Wednesday in that case otherwise. All right, that's all I got to say, man. Sorry for running class so damn late today, but data strategy is so damn important that I really want to make sure we understand it as best as we can. Hopefully we did just that. Spend some time with it. You won't regret it. All right, that's all I got to say, folks. Let's tighten up our game. It wasn't very pretty at times. It can be done, so you should. All right, we're done. Thank you all. I'll see you guys on Monday. Have a good rest of the week.